Hello. Awesome. Oh, that's over. Oh. Sorry about that, everybody. But looks like I've got sound. Oh, hello, hello. It might be a little bit quiet. I need to turn it up a little bit. I'm just trying to get I want to get another device on my show so that I'm not going to drop out because my computer it's screwy. Every time I try to go live, it crashes. So if I can just get this other device up and going, then yeah, I can have two connections to the show and I shouldn't drop out. So just give me a minute, thanks. I'm just checking to make sure the sound's coming through okay. Hello? Hello? Just making sure the sound's coming through. Hopefully. Just waiting to play. Nicely. Hello? Hello? So, yeah. Okay. Okay. That sound. Okay. Just a minute. Right. Looks like I'm sorted. Yes. Yes. Okay. Right. Got an echo going. Do I mute myself? Mute. No, that wasn't it. Okay. This is it. Maybe a little echo. That's not much. Just worry about. Well, oh, excuse me. So, how is everybody? Hope you're all good. It took so long to get the show up on the road. Talk about stress. It took me forever. Excuse me. But I did not give up. I persevered. I hope everyone can hear me all right. Maybe I'll just let me mute. Already have. Okay. Brilliant. So let us take a quick break. I know we haven't started anything, but let me grab a Bible, a couple of notes, and a coffee. You might want to do the same. And yeah, I'll be back with some very interesting news. I think you'll all be very pleasantly surprised. Okay, bye. Bye for now, that is. See you in a minute. Just waiting for my coffee. Oh, there's the noise. Okay. Now, where do we leave off? We left off Revelation 10. And I went for a little break. And haven't been able to get on live and sustain a live show since. But hopefully I've been helped a little enough to get this on the road. I notice I've got no viewers at the moment. That's fine. That's not the point. The point is the message. As long as everyone gets the message, that is absolutely fine by me. Now, here we go. Yeah, where we left off. Hebrews, First Peter, Revelations. We're back. Okay. Now, what does everyone speak about when they talk about Revelation 12? If everyone, hasn't had enough of it, I'm sorry. If everyone has had enough of it, I should say. I'm sorry, but let me just recap what Revelation 12 says. Then a great sign was seen in heaven. A woman was arrayed with the sun, and the moon was beneath her feet. On her head was a crown of 12 stars, and she was pregnant, and she was crying out in her pains, and in her agony to give birth. Another sign was seen in heaven. Look, a great fiery colored dragon with seven heads and 10 horns, and on its heads 7 diadems, and its tail drags a third of the stars of heaven, and it hurled them down to the earth. And the dragon kept standing before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she did give birth, it might devour her child. And she gave birth to a son, a male, who is to shepherd all the nations with an iron rod. And her child was snatched away to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, and where they would feed her for 1,260 days, which we know is 3.5 years. And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels battled with the dragon, and the dragon and its angels battled, but they did not prevail, nor was placed any longer in heaven. So down the great dragon was hurled, the original serpent, the one called Devil and Satan, who is misleading the entire inhabited earth. He was hurled down to the earth, and his angels were hurled down with him. I heard a loud voice in heaven say, "Now have come to pass the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of Christ, because the accuser of our brothers has been hurled down, who accuses them day and night before our God. And they conquered him because of the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of their witnessing, and they did not love their souls, even in the face of death. On this account, be glad, you heavens, and you who reside in them. Woe for the earth and for the sea, because the devil has come down to you, having great anger, knowing that he has a short period of time. Now, when the dragon saw that he had been hurled down to the earth, it it persecuted the woman who gave birth of the great eagle were given to the woman so that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is to be fed for a time and times and half a time away from the face of the serpent. And the serpent spewed out water like a river from its mouth after the woman, to cause her to be drowned by the river. But the earth came to the woman's help, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the river that that uh, that the dragon spewed out from its mouth. So the dragon became enraged at the woman and went off to wage war with the remaining ones of her offspring, who observe the commandments of God and have the work of bearing witness concerning Jesus. Okay, now, um, people, I believe people have gotten the 3.5 years or the 1,260 days confused. I don't believe that's what God's saying. I don't believe that times and half a time is referring to 1,260 days. They're two different periods of time. In one sense, she is taken away into the wilderness, and she is fed for 1,260 days. And then in the second sense, she is it talks about a time, times, and half a time, as a period of time when she is fed also. But this at this point, the dragon is coming after her. After she's been given wings to fly away. So to me, that sounds like, because it comes afterwards. It's not a repeat. It's another event, and I believe it's a second attempt at God on the church that's born from the birth of Christ. It's a second attempt, a second attack on it, and she is given a certain amount of time to have that river that is chasing after her to devour her, that has been used to stop that flow and that attack. And the devil has been thwarted in that case, and so he goes off to wage war against the rest of us. Okay, now let me read to you Revelations 11 and put Revelation 12 into context, where it actually belongs and where you get the actual picture surrounding it, like, what it actually means, what it's referring to. I don't know why people have ignored it. um, frustrating because I see a lot of people espousing to be Christians and espousing to read the Bible and all this sort of thing. And with a simple test, I can prove that, well, I haven't come across one except for one who had learnt the answer to the question from me talking about it anyway in our circle. And so when I asked him, he had the right answer, and that was wonderful. Hearing Jehovah's truth being of knowing that it was actually it had stuck, it was making ground, and it was that truth was being spread. And that truth is this: most people believe, well, most people will tell you that they read the Bible, and people that Bible bashers, basically people that teach people or preach to people, um, do is they tell you what they've been taught. Some of it's sort of scripted, maybe not written down scripted, but there is a underlying method to the way of their preaching and the way they teach, their style of preaching, and and unfortunately they're also given the boundaries basically of what to say, and also they're given sort of a directive. And by that I mean like this: um, they're taught what the Bible says, as opposed to say that they have education where they are taught the information, and then there's knowledge where you know the information. Knowing the information requires first-hand accounting. You have to be present or have replicated the exact same thing. Basically, science. Now, the test that I put people under to show that they actually haven't read the Bible and aren't proficient in its content. They have their issues, they have their little, they almost have an out for everything, for every question you ask them. If your question isn't coming from a Bible based person or place, so if it's not being put out in from a person who has enough knowledge to, refute their answer or correct them or bring to light the fact that their answer is manufactured and isn't actually what the Bible teaches. Now, this test is quite simple, and unfortunately, it's not most people's fault. Like, I don't blame people that go out and think they're Christians and try to teach people that they are. Like, I don't mean any disrespect to anybody, but by the time I finish this, you will know what I mean. Unfortunately, like the Bible says, the harlot and the beast and false religion, basically, and the way the system is, has sort of sucked people into this false narrative of the true Bible and the true following and the true teaching and the true knowledge. they espouse their own and they teach their own. They literally ignore what the Bible says and they teach um, what they're taught. And unfortunately, also, many of us, I'm guilty of it too. I did it a long time ago. We'll sit in. I didn't do it much because I only did it when I was young. So I started to question, and then all the trouble started. But most people will read what the priest tells them to read. And the priest will be giving a sermon or whatever, and he'll say, "Turn to here, this page in the Bible," and they read it, and then he might say a few words, and then he'll say, "Turn here," and then say a few words and turn here. And there's usually an underlying um, agenda with it that get out of you your loyalty, your respect, your admiration, your soul, and your money. And they have the way of circumnavigating the Bible to appease and um, bring light to these subjects, topics, or desires um, in a tried and tested way. And yeah, I've been kicked out of so many churches before I actually found the, the absolute truth, the complete truth of the Bible, which is all in the Bible. um, I was guilty of the same thing, but I started to question when I was in my late teens, and I questioned things I'd say against things I knew the Bible said that were in direct opposition to what they were saying, and they didn't like it. So I'd get kicked out after being told to I wasn't to speak out, and then telling them the Bible tells me to speak out. I don't understand who's the authority. Is the Bible the one teaching us and you, and therefore the one that we take our authority from, or are you the authority of the Bible and therefore everybody else? You know, so they don't like that. They don't like to push that. They don't like logical questions they can't answer, especially when it comes to the earth. But anyway, move on. Especially when you show out and outright truth, observable, undeniable proof that the heliocentric model is a lie. And, well, that's another story. But I am talking about undeniable proof. Proof that can be obtained from thousands upon thousands of students. You yourself may have been one who participated in this science project, experiment, whatever it was, event, and whatever you call it, and that is launching weather balloons and yeah, adventure channel, which I've been blocked from for 2 years. I have had no access to it. If anyone knows about it, it was my Flat Earth channel, where I basically have undeniable proofs, um, totally irrefutable evidence of many NASA claim, including light travel, and all this nonsense. Let me give you a quick example. They say that light travels forever and ever unless it hits something that absorbs it and therefore doesn't reflect. Now, they say that light can be, perturbed, and you can do an easy trick. You take a magnet, a neodymium magnet's the best, and just have a dribble, steady stream, but a dribble of water coming out of the faucet, and then put the magnet up close to the water that's streaming, and it only needs to be a slight stream, like I'm saying, it only needs to be like 3-4 mil across diameter, and put the magnet close to it, and watch the water be attracted to the magnet, and know that water can be perturbed. And this is a magnetic field, but they say it happens in gravity. But getting a bit off topic now, they tell us that light travel will tune them back. It takes 4 hours to travel from the sun to Neptune, reflect off Neptune, and bounce back and hit you in the eye on standing on the Earth. So it takes all 8 hours all around. Okay. Now, for one, the ecliptic and the plane that the planets travel on, when considering Neptune and considering that the sun is also moving along, around the Milky Way, and we're traveling with it, spiraling around it, and it's rising up, and it's rising up at something like 760 something, 162,000 feet per second, or something like that. And the sun and the moon, everything's rising with it. Now, in 8 hours, if we're moving and everything's moving with it, including Neptune and us and the sun, okay, so we're all rising, and then the light that reflects off Neptune hits you in the eye. That light that hits you had to have come from where it was reflected from when 4 hours ago, when it reflected off Neptune, and then it reflected, came back and hit you in the eye. Well, if we're moving upwards, as the heliocentric model, if we're moving upwards with the sun, then we would be looking down at the trajectory than the position of the object at the time of it hitting you in the eye. If that makes sense to anybody, then you should realize that they've been studying it for a long time, way before they discovered its actual position, and its actual position coincides with the position we see it in, which is impossible considering the light is 4 hours late, and it comes from a position where the planet Neptune was lower than the position we are at the time we receive the light that reflects off it, and Neptune is also higher than it was when it was reflected off it at the time it hits us in the eye. Therefore, there's no way we can see it on the plane that it orbits on. We're seeing it on the plane it orbits on 4 hours ago. So any mathematics or any trajectory or positioning science we do, considering any body that's out there in their heliocentric model, has to take into consideration the lag time of the light travel, and therefore its true position, which is not in their science. It's not in any of their accounting when it comes to positioning of planetary bodies that are seen from Earth. So that's totally refuted. Now, if we also take the fact that they say light travels to Neptune, hits us in the eye, bounces off the moon, bounces off everything we see. Everything we see. So everything we see is a reflection of the light, okay? What does that tell you? That tells you that the light traveled, apparently, from the light source to the object you're looking at, from the object you're looking at to your eye. That takes time and takes travel. Now, light is apparently a particle and um, a non-particle. It's a photon, sorry. Um, and so they say it's a particle just because the double helix experiment, which I can totally debunk. But anyway, well, first we'll go with this. From the source and from the object you're looking at, which gives you the ability to see it, apparently. I espouse that turning the light on gives the light, um, gives the energy to the objects, giving them the ability to give the light off. I haven't come up with anything better yet. Um, that's why some things absorb light, some things don't, some things absorb light more than others, all that sort of stuff. But anyway, the reason being that I come to this idea, because if you take two mirrors, say in most bathrooms, in most places, and I know everybody who's anybody has been in a place where you have two mirrors and you get the infinity set up where the light will bounce from one mirror to the mirror behind you and you can see forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever until you're either in the way or the angles of the mirror cause it to the reflection to go off on an angle, so therefore eventually dying off on the angle. But if you take two mirrors that are exactly opposite each other perfectly, and you turn the light off in there, and so that the room's totally dark, why does that happen? How can that happen? If you're in a room full of mirrors, where every wall is a mirror, and you have a light source, and you turn the light off, what stops the light from continuing on? You can travel through a vacuum without a source, without anything keeping it going, keeping it perpetuating, keeping it traveling, and keeping it emanating light to the point where it can hit an object that is nowhere near as reflective as a mirror, and then travel all the way back and hit you in the eye so that you can see it. Why can't you turn the light off in a room full of mirrors and not have a never-ending light source? Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. So that's one thing that I don't believe science about. Another thing is they say that two bodies, theory of relativity, Einstein, two bodies moving through a vacuum of different masses will, as they travel past the sun, if they were, just say they were on the same trajectory, on the same path, one behind the other, with the exact same speed, traveling the exact same way, their exact same distance from the sun, apparently there will be a different effect on each body depending on the mass. So that's what they call it, weight, mass, and gravity. That's three things that are factored in. Weight, mass, and gravity. One may sundive into the sun, and another may continue on, will continue on, and miss the sun and slingshot the sun. And this is based on what they tell us about space. This is how they tell us things happen. They tell us this is how the asteroid belt works. As far as I'm concerned, the asteroid belt should be arranged into meteorites that are further away depending on how big they are or small. Because that's the way that they say that the gravity is acting upon the gravity of the body of the asteroids. But they're in this perfect ring that, sometimes some get knocked loose apparently and this sort of stuff. And then you have the gravitational fields and other meteorites, other bodies, the sun included, and the moons. And I don't know how these don't cause the asteroid belt to go backwards. Because if you understand, the Mars and is it Jupiter is, I think the asteroid belt's between them, but just say it is for this purpose. As Mars and Jupiter come past each rock, as they go around their cycle, they're pulling the rocks towards them, so they slow the gravity of the rocks down. Slow the momentum of the rocks down, and also pull them out or inwards, depending on which plane it is, from their gravity. Yes, this is how it works. This is what they tell us. And so that should pull the meteorites backwards, slow them down, and then as Jupiter passes them, it should pull on them also and start speeding them back up. But because Jupiter is traveling forward, and those meteorites aren't exerting enough energy on Jupiter to slow it down, it keeps going at the same speed, but the meteorites have actually, the asteroids have lost speed from Jupiter catching up. And then when Jupiter went by, it kept going too fast for them to regain the speed they'd lost. You see? Once it's overtaken them, it's moving forward at a speed, and the distance between them is getting greater too fast for that gravity to, not gravity, for that energy to be given back to the asteroids. So eventually the asteroids will go backwards over millions of years of that scenario. It's inevitable. It has to be. Yeah, I think so. And I also think that they'd be arranged from largest to smallest, depending a lot from the outside in, just because of this setup. The way their setup is, it's what should happen. I never heard of it. But anyway, they tell us that, yeah, it's weight, mass, and gravity. So, depending on the weight, mass, and the gravity of each object, they'll do different things when traveling through a gravitational field. This is Einstein's relativity theory. If you look at the equation, and you can wrap your head around it, it took me a little bit, but I worked it out. It talks about how the trajectory will be changed depending on its distance from the gravitational field it's traveling through, of the source of it. Also, its speed, its angle, will all factor in to its new trajectory when it's leaving the gravitational field. That is, it's been acted on by an outside force and has an equal and opposite reaction. This equal and opposite reaction actually relies on the gravitational field working on the body, and the body is calculated by its weight, mass, and gravity, its own weight, mass, and gravity. This is how they say they can measure all the planets in the solar system, which is a lot of nonsense. You see, you can debunk this in seconds. They've already shown us that they went to the moon, and in a vacuum chamber or on the moon, whatever they did. I'm not a flat earther that says things aren't true. But in either on the moon or in a vacuum, and they did the experiment. I've got a video where they drop about this very subject. They drop a hammer and a falcon feather, and they hit the ground at the same time. And he says, "Oh, look, Newton was right." Um, and then I also show how MythBusters do it, and they get a vacuum chamber and they drop a hammer and feathers, I think it is, and they both fall at the same rate, and they say, they say, there you go, we have a permanent vacuum, and they did fall at the same rate, and um, how does this work? How can so in a vacuum, and this is what we observe, we know this. This is first-hand knowledge, like I was talking about before. We know that falling bodies in a vacuum towards a gravitational field like the Earth, which is this is how the experiment is laid out. Like I'm not going into density, how they say it works. In the gravitational field, fall the same rate. Yet in space, which is a greater vacuum because we're using semi-vacuums, they're using permanent vacuums, absolute vacuums. Okay, and they're telling us that this absolute vacuum that they're using has a different set of physics than what we can observe and test, and many a kid has, many a student, and scientist has tested this and done this experiment at school. Yeah. And with the flat earthers, like I said, my other channel, I've got video after video of proving that there's no way the sun is 93 million miles away. Absolute proof. No one can refute it. Without making up lies. I shut Tim Osmond down. He said there's no map and working model, and that the stars in the southern hemisphere prove that the flat Earth is wrong. And I shut him down and showed him no. Here's a working model, my model, and it has the exact scenario of the stars in south rotation set up same as the north, and how it works and why it works. And here's the model, a full visual model. And he hung up and left as soon as I finished the presentation. Didn't want to talk about it. Couldn't talk to him again. He won't talk to me. And I saw him on a video straight away saying the same thing to other people. Oh, there's no proof. No one's got a model. There's no proof, and the stars prove that the flat Earth is true. And that was just so disingenuous. But then they shut me down after I was getting real close to bringing the last final huge, absolute, everything laid out, why the satellites work, why the sun and the moon, how everything works, why it works, and what's going on at the moment too, with the days, with the weather, outside of half and that sort of stuff. But yeah, getting back to the main point, and of the NASA debunking, which is all part of it, I believe. It's all hand in hand. They're trying to hide God and His creation, and the fact that the Bible's account of the earth is and this heaven are exact replicas to what they find, and they hide it from us. They tell us lies. Tell us it's something that it's not, and teach kids the their nonsense world, the creation, the universe, as they have dubbed it, that the cosmos with a K, as the Bible would call it. Now, getting back to my main point and answer, the way I show that people are listening to what they've been taught and sticking to certain scriptures to prove their points or to back their own ideas up, or the opinions given to them. Also, being misled, lied to, and I don't like saying it, but I have to. Laziness. A lot of it stems from laziness, unfortunately. But yeah, it's solely because they don't want to read the Bible. They don't want to read it. But we'll do that right now. Let me get someone else to read it for us, though. Just a second. Okay, here we go. This is, yeah, take it away.
Chapter 11. And a reed like a rod was given me. He said, "Get up and measure the temple sanctuary of God, and the altar, and those worshiping in it. But as for the courtyard that is outside the temple sanctuary, and do not measure it, because it has been given to the nations. They will trample the holy city underfoot for 42 months. I will cause my 2 witnesses to prophesy 1,260 days, dressed in sackcloth. These are symbolized by the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands, and are standing before the Lord of the earth. And if anyone wants to harm them, fire issues forth from their mouths and devours their enemies. And if anyone should want to harm them in this manner, must be killed. Authority to shut up heaven that no rain should fall during the day they're prophesying. And they have authority over the waters to turn them into blood, and to strike the earth with every sort of plague as often as they wish. When they have finished their witnessing, the wild beast that ascends out of the abyss will make war with them, and conquer them, and kill them. And their corpses will be on the broad way of the great city, which is in a spiritual sense called Sodom and Egypt, where their Lord was also impaled. And those of the peoples and tribes and tongues and nations will look at their corpses for 3.5 days, and they do not let their corpses be laid in a tomb. Those dwelling on the earth rejoice over them and enjoy themselves, and they will send gifts to one another, because these 2 prophets tormented those dwelling on the earth. And after the 3.5 days, Spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon those beholding them. And they heard a loud voice out of heaven say to them, "Come on up here." They went up into heaven in the cloud, and held them. And in that hour a great earthquake occurred, and a 7,000 persons were killed by the earthquake. The rest became frightened and gave glory to the God of heaven. The second woe is past. Look, the third woe is coming quickly. And the 7th angel blew his trumpet, and loud voices occurred in heaven, saying, "The kingdom of the world did become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he will rule as king forever and ever." And the 24 elders who were seated before God upon their thrones fell upon their faces and worshiped God, saying, "We thank you, Jehovah God, the Almighty, the one who is and who was, because you have taken your great power and begun ruling as king. But the nations became wrathful, and your own wrath came, and the appointed time for the dead to be judged, and to give their reward to your slaves, the prophets, and to the holy ones, and to those fearing your name, the small and the great, and to bring to ruin those ruining the earth." And the temple sanctuary of God that is in heaven was opened, and the ark of his covenant was seen in his temple sanctuary. And there occurred lightnings and voices and thunders and an earthquake and a great hail.
Okay. How do you like that? Let's go through that. This is what he's talking about. Because what he's talking about is a lot more important in Revelation 12. It is the setup for it. And if you're paying attention about what God said at the beginning, just listen to what he said at the beginning.
Chapter 11. And a reed like a rod was given me, as he said, "Get up and measure the temple sanctuary of God, and the altar, and those worshiping in it."
Okay. Now, if you notice, it's talking about the temple sanctuary. That's in heaven. Okay? And he says, "and those worshipping in it." So remember that.
But as for the courtyard that is outside the temple sanctuary, cast it clear out, and do not measure it, because it has been given to the nations, and they will trample the holy city underfoot for 42 months.
Okay. This courtyard, talking about this temple that is on earth. Okay. We're talking about that area outside the sanctuary. Um, Now, this place, it's in a spiritual sense, and it is speaking about the nations, those who are not qualified for the anointing, I should say. And so he's measuring the courtyard, okay, and then.
And I will cause my 2 witnesses to prophesy 1,260 days, dressed in sackcloth. These are symbolized by the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands that are standing before the Lord of the earth. And if anyone wants to harm them, fire issues forth from their mouths and devours their enemies. And if anyone should want to harm them, in this manner he must be killed. These have the authority to shut up heaven that no rain should fall during the days of their prophesying. And they have authority over the waters and to blood, strike the earth with every sort of plague as often as they wish.
Okay. So, I'm going to listen out again. Let's make sure I tee it up.
Holy city underfoot for 42 months. And I will cause my 2 witnesses.
Okay. So, you guys want to say?
Months. And I will cause my 2 witnesses to prophesy 1,260 days, dressed in sackcloth.
Right, what's that referring to? Now, there's a point to this that women, and the problem is people don't read their Bible. Now, if you took notice of the video I did talking about the Revelation 12 sign, and I read, I think it was chapter 7, 8, and 9, and I explained how they were about World War I, World War II, okay? And they were the first woe, okay? Now, the second woe is this. This is the second woe. And the second woe, if you're paying attention, at the end of chapter 10, he is given Daniel. I believe it's Daniel. Anyway, he's given an order at the end of chapter 10, and it rolls straight into chapter 11. And this is it. And they said to me, you must prophesy again about peoples and nations and tongues and many kings. What do you think that's referring to? Now, I'll just roll it straight into Revelation chapter 11. This is the end of chapter 10. Last verse, verse 11. And they said to me, you must prophesy it again about people and nations and tongues and many kings. And a reed like a rod was given me. And he said, get up and measure the temple sanctuary of God and the altar and those worshipping in it. So you need to understand Revelation 12 is referred to at the end of Revelation 10, which is the beginning of Revelation 11. So it's it its true context comes at the beginning of Revelation 11. It's where it really belongs. But people have just skipped 11, skipped, and gone straight to Revelation 12. And what do you end up with there? You end up with a sign that is all over the internet. What did Jesus say about signs? He said a few things about signs, didn't he? One important thing he said about seeking signs. He said it is a wicked nation that seeks a sign. Okay? And that's what happened. Everybody who's anybody went straight after Revelation 12, straight to it, and read Revelation 12. And they missed the whole point, which is Revelation 11 gives you the account of what Revelation 12 is about, which is the woe. It's the second woe. This is the second woe that is what it's talking about when it says there's three woes coming. The first one was World War One, which is from 7 to 10. Okay, and then um, at the end of 10, it sets up Revelation 11. Okay. Now before that, it talks about the vision of him seeing the angel standing with one foot in the sea and one foot on the land, and he gave him the little scroll, and it was about what the four thunders spoke. What I believe this is to do with many people, because there's another quote further back, and it talks about it being bitter in the mouth and sweet in the stomach, I think, or the other way around. Can't remember, sorry. But it refers to it, and it's talking about the people. It's talking about how the people are towards Jehovah. Bitter in the belly. That's not a good thing. It's to do with their spirit and their spirit towards Jehovah. Now let me get on to these witnesses. Now what did it say about them? I will cause my two witnesses to prophesy for 1,260 days, 3.5 years, dressed in sackcloth. These are symbolized by the olive trees and the two lampstands that are standing before the Lord of the earth. Now, these two witnesses, God calls them his two witnesses. So they're two witnesses about what? They're two witnesses about something to do with God. What do you think that is? Um, their job was to prophesy for 1,260 days. About what? About what? Oh, let's see. Let's see. These are symbolized by the two olive trees and the two lampstands that are standing before the Lord of the earth. Who is the Lord of the earth? Satan is the Lord of the earth, the King of the world. That's why he could offer Jesus when he took him up onto a very high place and showed him on a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world across the flat earth. Well, if it is flat, but it was flat enough for Satan about showing them all, and offered them to him, and because they were given, he said, because um, it has been the authority has been given to me, because Satan is the king of the earth. He was put here as the chief cherub of the earth. He was here to watch over, and Jehovah hasn't taken away that rulership from him, because Jehovah's just. He gave him the rulership. He's doing a not very good job, but Jehovah's got a um, he's got an outcome that he hasn't been quiet about. He's made it quite clear to everybody what the outcome is for everybody's partaking, and evidently, if you end up being punished for the judgment, it's the same punishment. Anyway, so they're standing before Satan, the Lord of the earth. So they're Jehovah's Witnesses. What are they witnessing about for 1,260 days? Well, let me first tell you who the two witnesses are. We get a clue here, and the clue is they are symbolized. Symbolized. We ever hear the word symbolized before? When it comes to things of the imagination, because they're symbolized by two different things, but these two different things are two things. You've got two olive trees and you've got two lampstands. They're symbolized by that. Why would there be two of each? Well, one, olive trees are to do with people and to do with good people. Okay, um, to do with well, not so much good people, but people, because when God talks about that people are, their faith is so weak that it's like shaking the olive tree and they're just dropping off easily from a mild wind, basically. Um, but he speaks of two olive trees, two of them, and it's representing people. Two lampstands. What's a lampstand? Lampstand represents something that gives the ability to be able to do things in the dark. Yeah, in the dark, and also be able to be functionable. So it's to do with function. It's to do with um, assisting you to do what you do. Okay, and they stand before Satan. So they don't they might be prophesying about Jehovah, but they stand before Satan. So he's the one who seems to have their control. I believe they are, they are prophets for Jehovah because of the story they tell. Now, to put you out of your misery, let me tell you who these two witnesses are. The two olive trees and the two lampstands represent people and work. Okay, and they're dressed in sackcloth. In other words, they're in a state of woe, like when they used to rip their garments off when they found out uh, that Samuel was dead. Um, the king ripped his clothes off and put sackcloth on, so he was in a state of mourning. Okay. Now these two witnesses were dressed in sackcloth for 1,260 days. Now, if we look back at symbols that are imagined in the mind, like imagination, because that's what this is. When they're represented by two different things, but they're the one thing, they're just being represented by two different things. It's because, like, when um, Joseph was translating the dream for Pharaoh, he mentions um, that dreams come in twos, like that, and they he says that it symbolizes that they are true and that they are from God when it's reaffirmed. Okay, that's why there's two of them, two representations. Okay, and also in each representation they are two different things, and they are represented by things that are standing and long, like trees. They stand up. They have a trunk, and lampstands. They're a stand. They're a lampstand. They stand up tall, and there's two of them. Okay, so there's two. Um, okay, now I believe that these two are the twin towers, my friends. That's right, the twin towers. Now they lay on the ground for starters. Um, it was a few days before they started cleaning up there. If you remember, it was about 3.5 days because they were just doing bucket brigades looking for survivors. And then it was about how long? 3.5 years. I would say exactly 1,200, 1,000, yeah, 1,260 days from when the Twin Towers came down to the day they declared and went over and started war with Iraq, Afghanistan, or whatever it was. Saddam Hussein, weapons of mass destruction. Remember, they were pushing, saying he's got them, get rid of them, get rid of them. They had the inspectors going over there and that. But they didn't go over there until after. This is the second woe because the wars that have come out of it from then until now have been ongoing. They haven't stopped. Okay, so I'll let you move on. If anyone wants to harm them, fire comes out of their mouths and consumes their enemies. If anyone should want to harm them, this is how he must be killed. Okay, well, I'm pretty sure that the Twin Towers, because of the different agencies that were involved, and I would say that the people who brought down the Twin Towers with their weaponry, because anyone who's anyone knows that there's no way that those buildings came down through natural forces. They came down through weaponry, laser weaponry, whatever they used, their nanotechnology with their thermite or whatever it was, who knows. But I know it wasn't natural. Everyone knows it wasn't natural. There's no way that anything falls at free fall speed when it's concrete, running into concrete, crushing concrete and steel, all twisted in amongst it too, which was there for reinforcing. There's no way. Come on. So these whoever brought it down, and also people within that work there and that own it. Gary Silverstein, the government, the CIA, the Pentagon, everyone involved. It was a pretty big operation. But also, the point is that these people have the power to have the word fire come out of their mouths. Like it says, fire comes out of their mouths. And just like a general, when he tells his troops to kill, fire. That's what he says. Ready, aim, fire. Yeah, that's for an execution. Well, that's basically what was going on in the Middle East, and is still going on. Now, Damascus needs to be laid to ruin as rubble. We've got to get up to the what's it called? Excuse me. Um, Resurrection. Up part. So we're getting there. We'll get there. Okay. And also, interesting, this part here. If you've seen my videos that I've done, then you'll know I did a video about how 9/11 was also orchestrated. Um, I believe they used scalar wave weaponry, Tesla tech, and something you might want to look up. It's called the Hutchinson effect, where he's using different surplus army equipment and radio technology and just bits and pieces that he picked up along the way that have, different capabilities, microwave capabilities, all that sort of stuff, and radio technology and all that. And what he does is he'll has this area, and he induces a static electric field. So he makes a field of static electricity, and then he puts radio waves into the electric static electric um, field, and objects within the field have supernatural considered supernatural events. Like he'll turn a raw or cast iron block, and it'll start to almost like watching sped up video of iron decaying over time of like millions of years or something. I mean, breaking down and twisting and falling in on itself as if though it's losing its content. And you can see also coming from it like a wisp of like smoke, but it looks like black carbon ash. And I'd say this is like electrons or protons or something that's lost its electronic or magnetic energy. It's been robbed of it, so therefore it can't form a bond with the atoms around it. It can't make itself into a structure, so it falls apart, and it literally falls apart in squashes. And he levitates things, anti-gravity. He'll levitate 10-pound bowling balls and stuff. And he's had plenty of scientists look. He's been on like the news and things. He's also the only people interested in that have given him any interest. And I think have done contracts and have taken equipment or learned of his equipment or whatever, and gotten all his paperwork, all that sort of stuff, is the military, which is very interesting. Most people think, and so does he. He's a bit of an eccentric guy, but he's working off Tesla tech, and some of the things he can do is amazing. But also the fact that what I'm getting at, if I digress, a static electricity field, and he uses radio frequency. This, I don't know if they can send this by laser or by what technology they can use to actually do this, but they can do it. And they just need an electric field. Now, if you get a big enough electric field, you can do quite a lot of activity. We'll call it damage. We'll call it, but it's activity. And it just so happens that Cyclone Erin, that it was only reported on one station that morning, the morning of 9/11. This is 2001, and it was offshore, Manhattan Island, New York, just sitting offshore, no threat. But that's the static electricity field. That's the static electric field they would have used to be able to induce this Hutchinson effect type scenario that turned the building into atoms, like dust particles, so they don't actually have a structure anymore, like I was just saying. maybe accompanied by a nuke. I don't know. I heard about that, and they say it's is what's it called, point zero, whatever it is. You know, this is the place, the same name that they call a site that's been hit with a nuclear weapon, something zero. Anyway, um, and that's pretty funny because the next line here says, "These have the authority to shut up the sky, so that no rain may fall during the days of their prophesying, and these have the authority over the waters to turn them into blood, and to strike the earth with every sort of plague as often as they wish." Ever heard of geoengineering? So, besides the fact that they could have brought the Twin Towers down like that, they could control the weather, and they admitted it in 2014. But it's been going back for a long time. There's companies that do seeding for a long time, geoengineering. They do it for people all over the world. It's a growing industry that's been going for a long time. And it's been done for a long time. Ionized salt, and they use dry ice and all this other sort of things. They'll use canisters that they'll drop, and also spray out the back of planes to seed clouds, or to kill clouds, or to whatever they need to do, move them, steer them. Now with their radio frequencies, they can do whatever they want. So this is what the Bible's speaking about here, and it's talking directly about the people who committed 9/11. When they have finished their witnessing, okay, the wild beast that ascended out of the abyss will wage war with them and conquer them and kill them. Who is this beast? Do we know who it is? Well, it's the Vatican, if you'd like to know. The beast is the Vatican, because the number of the beast is 666. And I've been looking at a couple of different denominations that are around espousing to know what's going on with the Bible and stuff, but obviously don't, because they're on the same page as most people that espouse. But they seem to all have the number of their businesses, addresses, and their names in ancient Hebrew, and also in English and Latin, and all that equals the number of the beast. And so it's the Vatican. Now the Vatican is it has the Rothschilds as its treasury. They can do whatever they want. These people are the ones that are really in control of everything. So therefore, this power comes from them. So these are the ones that would have sent America basically into the Middle East, I think. Either way, it is the beast system that has its authority being pushed here. And their corpses will be on the main street of the great city that is in a spiritual sense called Sodom and Egypt. That's America, where their Lord was also executed on the stake. See, because they are founded by God, their nation under God. And also, there's a lot of ancient Egyptian artifacts that were found there, that were there before they got there. Also, there's a lot of Egyptian stuff there. Also, a lot of their cities and little towns, not cities, but little towns, and they have a lot of names that are also names of Egyptian places. Very much so, lots of them I've found. Um, yeah, and she is called she. It is a she. Her justice system has a lady who's blindfolded, and the Statue of Liberty, and also the Colombian, you know, from sea to shining sea was led by a woman, spirit of a woman or something like that. And those of, yeah, and those of the peoples and tribes and tongues and nations will look at their corpses for 3.5 days, and they do not allow their corpses to be laid in a tomb. And okay, so that's talking about the Twin Towers. They laid there while they were looking for survivors 3.5 days before they actually started to clean up and do something about it. Um, and or everyone on the earth saw it. Everybody, all those it says here, and all those dwelling on the earth re- rejoiced. Sorry, I'll go back to that verse before. And all of those peoples and tribes and tongues and nations will look at their corpses for 3.5 days. And that's what happened. For 4 days, they didn't. They hadn't started cleaning up yet. They were looking for bodies and doing bucket brigades. And those dwelling on the earth rejoiced over them and celebrated. See, those dwelling on the earth, not everybody, not nations and tongues and tribes and you know um, kingdoms. It doesn't say anything about peoples. It doesn't say anything about that. It says, and those dwelling on the earth. It's just talking about some people celebrated, and they will send gifts to one another because these two prophets tormented those dwelling on the earth. Okay, and that's the World Trade Center. A lot of people would have had their debt wiped. So yeah, there would have been a few people that were celebrating, considering that they are now not being tormented by it. You know, um, they might have, yeah, I guarantee you. Anyway, after the 3.5 days, spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood on their feet, and great fear fell upon those who saw them. So, right, after 3.5 days, they were starting to say terrorist attack, Saddam Hussein, um, you know, um, Bin Laden, all this sort of stuff. We want to go to war. And they heard a loud voice from heaven say to them, come up here. And they went up into heaven, in the cloud, and their enemies saw them. In that hour there was a great earthquake, and a the earthquake, and the rest became frightened and gave glory to God, and gave glory to the God of heavens. Now, got to just dissect this. And they, sorry, after the 3.5 days, spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood on their feet, and great fear fell upon those who saw them. Okay, so the people who saw that they were starting to point fingers at who they wanted to attack over this false flag, um, they started to get a little bit worried. They were getting a bit scared. But and they heard a loud voice. Who are they talking to? Who's the they? Well, let me get through this and explain where this timeline is here, and then I'll explain to you who the they are. Okay. And they went up into heaven in the cloud, and their enemies saw them. In that hour, so this is the same period of time here. Okay? In that hour, there was a great earthquake, and a tenth of the city fell. 7,000 people, persons, were killed by the earthquake, and the rest became frightened and gave glory to God of the heavens. Now these people saw them. Okay. Now the they that they're talking about, who are the ones who will rise first? A lot of people know the answer to this. The first to rise will be the dead in Christ. Remember. So the voice that called, the loud voice that was heard, that called out, that said, "Come on up here from heaven. Come on up here." That voice was God or Jesus. This is the rapture. Okay. This is the beginning of the rapture. This has happened after. This happens after all the wars in the Middle East have been going on, and they ended, and then Syria started to kick in and get a little bit more serious. Okay, and then in 2015, in the same hour that this event happened, the earthquake that is, in that same hour, God called to those who were dead in Christ and said, "Come up here." Okay, 7,000 people were killed. Okay, this I've got it written down. It happened on the 25th of April on 2015. No, I'll just Google it quickly. Just a second. Nepal, I think it was. Yeah, Nepal. There were 7,000 killed and 17 injured. And it happened on the 25th of April. That was a magnitude 7.9. Okay. And that was the hour that God started to call them up. Now, just let me find this for you. This is a wonderful little thing. What also started happening at that same time is something that, yeah, it's a little bit troubling to the powers that be. Especially considering the call to come up here. Sorry, just looking for this video. The call to come up here and it being answered. Let me show you this. It's beautiful. It's must have freaked him out big time. Dun, 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 dun. It's my videos. Sorry, one. Sorry, everyone. Just a minute. Sorry, everyone. Yep, I'm live again.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Whoa.
Okay, is that better? Yeah, cool. Yeah, sorry about that. The power went off at the power box. Kids were cold here, so I think they were putting heaters on. Lights shorten it out as well, but I think it was a heater. Hey kids, you can't get a straight answer out of them. We can't just say, yeah, I was trying to put this heater on. It's okay, doesn't matter. They obviously turned the heater off because the lights are working fine. But doesn't matter. They're gross. They're beautiful things. Anyway, what was I? Yeah, 7,000 people killed. And what was I doing? Here we go. Now you've heard about this plays into flat Earth too. But you've heard about not flat Earth, but into what I've found and how I think things happen. But yeah, this plays into it as well. Yeah, you know about it's the meteoroid detector. What it does is it detects when anything. Oh, where'd it go? When anything traverses the one open. Let it go. When anything magnetic field, magnetic field, what it's called. It's not what I wanted. They know about it, so it's set up. It's part of the Star Wars thing, I think, where they set it up so they know when a missile might come through. But it also works for meteorites and whatnot, and also things leaving the Earth, traveling through the what is it, magnetic field. magnetosphere. Probably part of the ionosphere too. I only say that because the ions that they use the word ion. That's me. Just thinks, Um, yeah, 2015 was around the same time that this happened. Oh, so my video's not going to work. Okay, I'll go to YouTube or whatever, and I'll go check it out there if I can. And they have, they have a machine that makes a noise when something travels through this region. And what I'm going to show a video that was put out by that, and it was about the traffic that was traveling through that region. And it began at that time, around the same time, 2007. Oh, sorry, 2015 earthquake in Nepal happened, and yeah, mm-hmm. Just this moment, yeah, and it surprised a little. Oh, excuse me. Sorry for the sign. Mm. Sorry, just with all this new, double signing in stuff. for safety reasons, it just takes a little while longer now. Please bear with me. It'll be worth it. Come on. Sorry, everybody. Oh, hurry up. Sorry, everybody. Just one quick second again. It's just crazy. That's why I had to go and buy another device because I don't think I was going to be able to get on live, and I really need to get these messages out, especially. Mm-hmm. Okay. Finally.